Good evening. In this broadcast, the information program time. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, today in the Kremlin held a business meeting with the Prime Minister, Viktor Chernomyrdin, and the Chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Shumeyka. There they discussed three basic topics: the imminent Almaty CIS summit, economic aspects of the annual address of the President to the Federal Assembly, which is being prepared, and the planned for the 17th of February, the Pan-Russian Conference on questions of local self-rule. As a correspondent of Viktor TASS was told by informed sources within the Kremlin, the work of the head of state over the text of the address to the deputies of the State Duma and the Federative Council is almost completed. It's expected that an honest and profound analysis will be attempted in the accomplishing of economic reform in Russia during the last year. Many positions formulated by Boris Yeltsin in his address last year to the national electives remained unfulfilled by the government and also by the deputy corps. According to the same sources, the head of state told the chairman of the government that he intends to correct that mistake and take under control realization of basic themes of his address. During today's Kremlin meetings, again emphasized with the need for an immediate launching of restoration of Chechnya, reconstruction of both the economic and social spheres. All of the day today, the deputies of the Federative Council dedicated to two questions: discussing candidacies for justices of the Constitutional Court and examining the decree of the President which declares a state of emergency on part of Northern Ossetia and Ingushetia. As a result, the Federative Council has confirmed a judge for the Constitutional Court. He is the Doctor of Juridical Sciences, Marat Baglain. Hence, the deputies have selected the last judge, and now the Constitutional Court is completely formed. For the Federative Council, this process required 1.5 years. The second issue, which remained from Friday when, at the special meeting, there was no quorum, is the presidential decree on the state of emergency. The diametrically opposed positions of the deputies indicated discussions would be difficult. The regimen of a state of emergency cannot be lifted under any circumstances, because the situation has escalated because of those events which are occurring today in Chechnya. It's time to think about declaring a state of emergency in Chechnya as well. This would be for the sake of defending the remaining peaceful residents there. The temporary administration would have had to concentrate all of its efforts to facilitate the return of refugees, provide aid in restoring their homes, the demolished businesses, and provide them with work. Instead of this, every 2 months we are given decrees for ratification, which are absolutely repetitious and redundant and are not implemented on occasion. As a result, the grossest violation of constitutional rights and liberties of citizens is occurring for the third year. The deputies discussed the decree behind closed doors, but it was learned that only 76 parliamentarians supported the president, and now a conciliatory commission will be involved. Later, the Federative Council will make a third attempt to ratify the decree. The Grozny Square, Minutka, and the adjacent blocks were completely freed from the Dudayev armed formations. Combat activities have ceased in that area. This was told to a correspondent of Viktor TASS by a representative of the Ministry of Defense of Russia. According to him, all attempts of the unlawful military groups were foiled to return positions they lost in this part of Grozny. Currently, within the city limits, the Ministry of Internal Affairs forces are conducting an operation to clear the locale. They're fighting's underway with snipers and smaller militarized groups which penetrated city blocks or who were unable to break through the blockade cordon. Successfully completed is the mission to take over the river Sunja, and here now the Plattstorm was broadened, where paratrooper units are brought in, and some of the subdivisions which replaced contingents of the federal forces moved into the rear. According to a Ministry of Defense spokesman, together with the withdrawal of forces into the region controlled by the armed forces, there's constant arrival of Ministry of Internal Affairs units. In the near future, it's planned that all army forces will be returned to their sites of permanent stationing on the territory of Chechnya. Only contingents of the Northern Caucasus Military District will be engaged. A group of experts and observers at work in the region of the Chechen conflict under the Commissioner of Human Rights of Russia, Sergei Kovalov, has lists of 25,000 peaceful citizens who died in Grozny during the 2 months of combat. This was reported by a member of the group, the deputy of the State Duma, Yuri Rybakov. Today at a press conference in Moscow, he said that these lists with the names and addresses of the victims were compiled on the basis of a poll taken of the refugees from the capital of Chechnya. Meanwhile, according to preliminary reports, as of today, losses among the federal forces in Chechnya number 907 casualties and more than 4,300 personnel injured, Interfax was told by sources in the force ministries. And refugees are estimated to be at around 195,000. Our personal correspondents on the Northern Caucasus, Nikolai Shabalkov and Rudolf Lushanov report from Ingushetia, which neighbors with Chechnya. These people were overtaken by a plight. War deprived them of their homes, confiscated everything they accumulated over the years. Neighboring Ingushetia alone has given asylum to more than 50,000 refugees from Chechnya. One can't envy them. For the second month, they are in crowded, cold wagons. Here, there are almost 1,000 people. And if there was even more space, it wouldn't be empty. People arrive on a daily basis. They are housed in sports auditoriums and in schools. They have forgotten comfort. All they seek is warmth. Many have settled in private apartments. The head of the administration of the Nazra region, Baudin Shaudushev, took 43 people into his own home. Attempting to alleviate the demise of the refugees, cheer up their lives are not only the Ingushetian authorities. Humanitarian aid almost daily arrives from neighboring republics and Rim areas from various international organizations. These blankets and slippers were sent by the International Children's Organization, UNICEF. Food and warm clothing, warm articles are constantly provided by people from the Stavropolia, Voronezh and Krasnodar areas. The Pediatric Hospital of Moscow is prepared to admit children from the area of the Chechen conflict. This was stated to Interfax by the head of the press center of the Moscow Department of Healthcare, Igor Nadezhdin. He's speaking of refugee children who are left without parental protection. He specified 100 places in various pediatric hospitals of the city were prepared and 5 quarantine units for infectious patients. At almost midnight in Omsk, this train was greeted by special wagons from Chechnya. Parents were returning on it who had taken humanitarian aid to their children and to other soldiers. I got to Chervlonne and was the only mother in our group who managed to see our children. When we were en route there, we were shot at and a man in our company was injured. Only an insignificant number of parcels they managed to hand over personally to the fellows. The rest of the cargo, including boxes with warm articles of clothing and food, were distributed along the road to military servicemen and entrusted it to the mail. Generally, is there any sense for others to go there from other cities? No, there's no sense in it because you can't get into Grozny. There's no passage open into the city. Today, Konstantin Borovoy, who returned from Chechnya, shared his impressions about his trip with the journalists. We've already lost the Chechen War, said the leader of the Party of Economic Freedom. In the opinion of Borovoy, the Russian army has completely been demoralized. The problem which concerns them most, who will assume responsibility for the bodies? That is the cynical truth. This was said in personal conversation. And one of these generals said that if Yeltsin attempts to write these bodies off on us, we will write these bodies off on him. It's simple enough for us to unfold our resources, and in Russia, what we need will be done. Konstantin Borovoy told about his meeting near Grozny with Chahar Dudayev, who's not at all hiding in a bunker, but moves about freely. According to Borovoy, Dudayev doesn't believe that he'll soon be arrested by Russian special forces and calls the Federal Service of Counterintelligence a matchbox factory. The general is calm, in control of the situation, even writes poetry. In conversation with Borovoy, Dudayev said he's against terrorism and is prepared for dialogues. At the press conference, the statement of the Party of Economic Freedom was distributed. Our appeal to the international community is to recognize the independence of the Chechen Republic, and this will save Russia. According to experts of the party, in Chechnya, 12,000 Russian soldiers have died. Today we received the statement of the press service of the government of Russia, in which it says that lately, in the speeches of several Russian and foreign political activists, publications of mass media, there are statements heard that events in the Chechen Republic are causing significant damage to economic reform being conducted in Russia. Recent statements by the president and the government, it's emphasized in the document, confirm the devoted course of the Russian leadership in conducting economic reform. The main objective of the economic policy for 1995 was and remains achieving financial stability on the basis of implementing a strict budgetary and credit monetary policy. There will be no re-examination of this policy in connection with events in Chechnya. During these rare moments in the Bolshoi Auditorium of the Moscow Conservatory, the Requiem of Giuseppe Verdi is being played and performed by the Symphony Orchestra of the television radio company Ostankino, conducted by Alexander Mikhailov, accompanied by the Shmeshnikov choir and the soloists of the Bolshoi Theater. The Requiem is in honor of the memory of all Russian soldiers and officers who died in fulfilling their military duty. In a few hours, a 24-hour warning strike will be launched by workers of the coal industry. Its aim is to accomplish payment from the government for debt in salary, which, according to the Russian Coal Union, is 1,345 billion rubles. The strike will begin at Sakhalin and will spread in a wave to the west throughout almost all coal regions of Russia. It's expected that 600,000 miners and coal workers will participate, and during these 24 hours, 1 million tons of coal will not be brought to the surface. And in the event their demands are not satisfied, the miners intend in the first days of March to declare an indefinite strike and will submit political demands, that is the resignation of government and early presidential elections. Only the Joint Stock Association Rostov Coal is owed 200 billion rubles by the federal government in the form of government support for the sector. 2-month salary delays, the cancellation of all social programs, residential construction, the severe growth in the productivity, traumatism, and the most important thing is the dismal perspective for the coal region of the Rostov district generate natural bewilderment among the 80,000 staff members of miners who, for the 7th day, are on an indefinite strike. Tomorrow, the Don miners will participate in the 24-hour warning strike of the coal workers of Russia. And yet, not all regions will take part in the strike. The miners of the Chechynsk district will continue working, fearing that even a 24-hour standstill in producing fuel will lead to serious interruptions in the work of energy objects in eastern Siberia and the Far East. And furthermore, as of today, all the companies of the association Vorkuta Coal are working on a regular schedule. Having ended their own 24-hour warning strike, the 11 mines of the city are operating at full capacity. Furthermore, the Vorkuta miners do not intend to strike again before spring. Meanwhile, the government is undertaking measures in order to diffuse the intensity of the strike sentiment. A special sectoral commission proposes to finance the coal sector in the first quarter to the tune of 2.5 trillion rubles. This sum includes 800 billion rubles of debts to the miners for last year. As Intertas reports today, in the pit faces of certain mines of the Rostov district, the Sambekovskaya, Anniversary, Nesvitaevskaya, Ayutinskaya, and Sokolovskaya, the process of the disintegration of incisions in pit faces has begun. To restore these mines will be a difficult task. In Moscow, several meetings were held. I spoke with the Minister of Finances and the Prime Minister, and I also spoke with Anatoly Borisovich. Here, I encountered understanding in resolving the problems. But what worries us is that the problem is being resolved too slowly. As of this morning, of the 136 billion debt to our coal associations, 70 billion approximately was paid out, and in the morning they said that another 25 billion was paid out. We will follow this situation, and I think that even those measures that the government undertook today, although some money was allocated, not a very large amount, but they will somehow balance it. They're paying out the most volatile debts. Today, we paid out 85 billion last Friday and last week, and 80 billion. Our colleagues in the Ministry of Finances are writing up the amount in the audit obligations for that sum. This money will go to the Rostov district, to Vorkuta, Kuzbas, Primorye, that is the main basins which are receiving these funds. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, placed a veto on the federal law on the restoration and protection of the savings of the citizens of the Russian Federation. This was reported by the press service of the head of state. In the message to the chairman of the State Duma, Ivan Rybkin, the president indicated the juridical incongruity in the law which he declined and proposed that with the representatives of the government and the Central Bank of Russia, a commission be organized for the immediate perfection of the document, to bring it into compliance with the Constitution and prepare such a system of restoration and protection of savings accounts of citizens which would defend their violated rights. Traditionally, once a month, Boris Yeltsin meets with the heads of the regions of Russia. Today at the press conference, participants of yesterday's meeting stated that they discussed the draft law on local self-rule. The governors approved the president's version. They offered Boris Yeltsin to examine the possibility of rejecting the policy of signing agreements between central authorities and the subjects of the Federation. It, in their opinion, is a direct path in shaking up the unity of Russia. We feel that the rims and districts of Russia, because they comprise the unity of the Russian Federation, should refuse to sign such an agreement. The heads of the administration stated that they have great hopes for the creation and development of a common Russian securities market. Therein, they see a powerful source of investment. The president supported that proposal to give those districts deputies national status who have undergone expertise in the Ministry of Finances. At the same press conference, it was stated that Boris Yeltsin promised to issue a decree to assist companies in their ability to pay out salaries to their employees. The president, as the head of the administration of the Orlov district, Yegor Stroyev, said, reacted attentively to the region of the heads of the administration to increase the volume of funds reserved for the purpose of salary from 30 to 50%, that is, of all monetary revenues on company accounts. The undeclared war in the Northern Caucasus has put on the back burner the decisive transformation of the weapons market in Russia. In the last 2 months, curious events occurred here. The former general director was dismissed and a new one was appointed for Rosvooruzhenia, Russian weapons. One more committee was formed on military technological policy, and today a credit observing council began to function on the problems of military technical cooperation. The council unites almost 70 directors of the defense sector and staff of Rosweapons who must strive to find coordinated decisions in contentious situations. And contentions exist where there is money. The fact is that the defense sector, which was oriented toward export, now wants to deal in its own weapons itself, which evoked great turmoil in the weapons market and caused prices to drop. According to our expert estimates, last year the damage was around between $500 and $600 million. The overall revenue, according to Mr. Katyulkin as well, was $1.7 billion. This sum is shameful if one speaks of a country of the size of Russia. Also, one cannot avoid the ever-increasing independence of companies. The official right to emerge on the foreign market was already received by MiG producers, and therefore, evidently, a committee was set up which, by dismantling the monopoly of Rosweapons, will define producers, recipients, volumes, and prices. Yes, you are correct. To a certain degree, we will lose our monopoly. But the involvement of these companies will be the creation of a new economic potential in the defense sector, and Rosvooruzhenia will help this process in every way. Although, can one think that Rosvooruzhenia has come to terms and yielded its position prematurely? We have to go through a transitional period. Who knows the market best today? Where are the people with ability to speak? Where are these people who worked in these markets or were in this country, know the prime minister of different countries or ministers of foreign affairs and can speak to them and be trusted? So the battle for the weapons market will continue not only outside but within Russia. Forced into a leave of absence are tens of thousands of employees of the largest plant of Udmurtia, the Izhmash. For an entire month, the production of automobiles, motorcycles, lathes, sports and hunting rifles, defense technology is at a standstill. The reason for that standstill is the absence of money. For goods delivered, only the Minister of Defense and Internal Affairs of Russia owe the company more than 26 billion rubles. And news from the Tambov district today, on the contrary, inspires hope. The Russian remote area, the Tambov district, lives far from political storms and economic turbulence. And today, when the times have passed for romantic news of the opening of new automobile giants, here events are occurring which can be seen as sensational. In the small town Raskazov, a new plant of the joint stock company Altcom has opened. Here they're setting up production of cargo vehicles, for now only 200 a year. And when the main production facility opens, they plan to increase the number to 1,000, and here they emphasize not quantity but quality. This is the assembly plant where, for special orders, per unit autos are assembled. Their expectancy before capital repair is 1 million kilometers, and they satisfy the requirements of the international standard Euro 1. This permits their use and service almost in the entire world, and they cost 1.5 to 2 times less than foreign analogies. In the assembly of the alt cans, they use equipment and aggregates of the leading firms of the world, but here they're prepared to broaden cooperation with domestic supply partners. The main thing is that their parts should not be inferior to the quality of foreign ones and be somewhat cheaper. But today, the plant Altcom's orders are creating additional jobs, and not only in the Tambov district. According to the reports of Itartas, the International Monetary Fund feels the results of the talks with Russian leadership, which ended Monday in Moscow, were positive. Russia has given a series of responsible answers corresponding responding to the circumstances to the questions of its economic policy. However, they are insufficient to receive credits from the fund. This was announced today by the Executive Director of the International Monetary Fund, Michel Camdiciu, in Paris at a meeting with the press. On his instructions, the delegation of the fund has returned to Washington in order to analyze the information and proposals they have received so as to expedite renewal of consultations. Slovakia is one of the youngest European countries. It became a sovereign parliamentary republic only 2 years ago in January of 1993. Authorities are relying on market mechanisms attempting to reduce inflation and unemployment. The aim of their foreign policy is integration into Western European structures. For the government, it's not easy, however, to bring both directions to a common denominator. In these conditions, the objectivity increases toward the significance of economic ties with the CIS countries, foremost with Russia. After christening, this ship of an ocean river faring type is headed for Arkhangelsk. Our firm, says its general director Milan Kopchik, is the only of all the countries of the former Soviet economic network which delivers for Russia. They cost 20% less than ships of the Western countries, and this is far from the only example of cooperation. Only with these radial tires can our Volgas be sold abroad. The Matador plant in Slovakia in the town Kurkov is setting up the first joint company with Russia. In other words, the fabric of our cooperation is becoming more dense and colorful. Questions on which experts for now weren't able to find optimal solutions, including that of the Black Sea Fleet, are in the center of attention of yet another round of Ukrainian-Russian talks, which began today in Kiev. We arrived here to prepare for the visit of Boris Yeltsin for the signing of the fundamental documents between our countries, said the first Vice Premier of the Russian Federation, Oleg Saskovets, during his meeting with the President of Ukraine, Leonid Kuchma. At today's meeting, the delegation hopes to find constructive solutions for those problems which have delayed the signing of a broad-scale political agreement, and they are questions of dual citizenship and the point where Russia recognizes the territorial wholeness of the Ukrainian state. The heads of the delegation during the meeting urged for a quest along untraditional routes. Apart from the agreement on friendship, the sides again discussed the Black Sea Fleet and economic cooperation, including Ukraine's debts. Judging from the results of the first day, the paragraph on dual citizenship will be isolated from the agreement and will become a basis for a future document to be examined by the presidents of Ukraine and Russia. Today in Vilnius, the delegation of Belarus, headed by the President Alexander Lukashenko, held talks with the delegation of Lithuania, headed by the Prime Minister Adolfas Šleževičius. They discussed ways to realize the trade economic agreement so that between the two countries the highest preference in trade status would be in effect. The accompanying letter would be sufficient, which, as was said at the meeting, will be sent out in the next few days. An agreement is also being prepared to protect guarantees for investments, revoking double duty and customs tariffs. They exchanged views on the safety of the Ignalinsk power station and the strategy of its joint exploitation. The Belarusian delegation was interested in the building of an oil terminal on the Lithuanian coast in Buting, because it could be connected by pipeline with the Novopolotsk oil line. In Tiraspol, the decree publicized today of the leader of the Pridnestrovian area, Igor Smirnov, on the impermissibility of removing the property of the 14th Army of Russia is unlawful. This was stated to a correspondent of Vitritas today by the first Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, Nicolae Osmakescu. He heads the delegation of the Republic, which is involved in talks on the withdrawal of the Russian army from the Pridnestrovian region. As is known, the leaders of Pridnestrovia insist on the fact that all the property of the army should remain in Pridnestrovia. According to certain reports, in the stockpiles of the 14th Army, there's around 400,000 tons of ammunition, and it's easy to imagine what consequences one may expect. What is the official position today of official Kishinev, the leadership of the Republic, on this question? We strictly adhere to that decision, which was already made. An agreement has been signed between Moldova and Russia. On a high level, it was signed by the prime ministers in the presence of the presidents of Russia and Moldova, an agreement on the withdrawal of the 14th Army over the course of 3 years. Currently, there is discussion of the mechanism of the withdrawal of that army because, first of all, one must keep in mind not to repeat the mistakes of other regions when personnel was removed but weapons remained. The army is on the territory of the Republic of Moldova, yes, in Pridnestrovia, but Pridnestrovia is an inexorable part of Moldova. Therefore, on all levels, it's clear and it's bewildering that lately certain persons, including representatives of Prидnestrovia, state that they supposedly feel that the weapons are their own property, etc. At least, this is naive, and they can't speak this way with Russia. Last night, on the eve of another round of Abkhazian Georgian talks in Geneva, diversionary groups perpetrated terrorist acts in the Gulf region of Abkhazia, near the village Altabayev, which is in the security zone controlled by the peacekeeping forces. From an ambush, the vehicle, Ural, of the Russian peacekeeping forces was shot at. As a result of the attack, fatally injured was the private of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, Alexei Romanov. A few hours later, near the village Nabatevi, a regiment of Abkhazian militia was attacked. 2 employees of the Internal Affairs of the Republic were seriously injured. The government of the Republic of Abkhazia issued an adamant protest to the Georgian side today regarding the incessant actions which lead to the destabilization of the situation in the Republic. In the statement, it's emphasized that the Georgian leadership is not striving for peaceful regularization of the conflict and does not undertake necessary measures to curb actions of diversionary groups. Today, in the Kremlin, the head of the administration of the President of Russia met with the delegation of the Senate of the South African Republic, headed by its chairman, Kobi Kutseu. During conversation, Sergei Filatov cited the paramount objectives of the country being economic reform and the reformation of the structure of state rule. There is all basis to presume, emphasized the head of the President's administration, that the current year in the development of Russia's economy will be a breakthrough year. From inflationary processes, we will manage to shift toward investment processes, he said. One of the main objectives in reforming structures of state rule, Sergei Filatov feels the development and adoption of laws on local self-rule. The impediment in implementing social economic reforms, in his opinion, is the absence of a sufficient quantity of laws, and Sergei Filatov says that today several thousand such are needed. The main issue facing the government power, the head of the President's administration also called reform of the armed forces. The American Secretary of State, Christopher, stated that next year the United States will allot $783 million to support Russia and other countries of the former Soviet Union in order to conduct their democratic reforms. And yet providing aid to foreign countries, the White House always remembers economical use of funds. According to the draft budget for the new financial year, it's planned to cut more than 400 federal programs. The government apparatus also faces cutbacks. The President of Poland, Lech Walesa, stated that he intends to make a final step and change the political structure within the country if by the end of February nothing is done lawfully or peacefully. Walesa threatens to suspend the parliament and if the parliament does not dismiss the government of the Prime Minister Pavlik. In Brazil, sworn into office is the re-elected National Congress, the parliament of the country. There are no new political names in it, however. 93% of the congressmen until this time held solid posts within executive government or already had been legislators in the capitals of their states. 40 of them in the past were governors, and 100 of them held ministerial portfolios. Of the leaders of the Senate and the National Congress, the second head of state is José Sarney, who from 1985 to 1990 was the not very best president of Brazil. Under him, the country almost declined into an abyss of hyperinflation. Now, José Sarney swears to be a staunch defender of the reforms of the new president of the country, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, who has managed to reduce inflation from 50 to 1.5% monthly. The new parliament promises support for the president in completing reform of the constitution, which was adopted during a military regime, and more than anything else, impedes the development of the country. The new congressmen will begin their work on the 15th of February with firm confidence in their future, because their newly departed predecessors managed to adopt a law according to which Brazilian senators and deputies are the highest paid parliamentarians in the entire world, with revenues of more than $150,000 a year. From the United States, news arrived that the head of the gang of the Islamic terrorists who had planned a series of explosions in America's largest city, New York, admitted his guilt. Commentary from Igor Rostovtsov. We'll remind you the rest of the Islamic terrorists followed the explosion in the World Trade Center in New York on the 26th of February 1993, as a result of which 6 people died and more than 1,000 people were injured. 2 years were needed to expose the suspected perpetrators. In New York, at the trial of the history's most prominent terrorist case, the head of the gang, Sadiq Ibrahim Sadiq Ali, and also 11 Muslim extremists were indicted for their intentions to conduct terrorist acts in the city. During the investigation, it became clear that they planned an explosion in the UN building, the local FBI department's buildings, 2 tunnels, and a bridge joining New York and New Jersey. It's even terrible to think how many casualties there would have been, not counting material damage, if these plans were successful. Apart from that, the Muslim extremists were accused of a conspiracy to assassinate the president of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak. Guilt was admitted, but not clear yet were the intentions beyond these monstrous plots. And yet now it is clear that they are part of a chain of criminal acts which are perpetrated by Islamic extremists in various parts of the globe. One may include terrorist acts in Algeria, Egypt, Israel, Lebanon, and other countries which are within the sphere of interests of such criminal organizations. In this connection, one must recognize that the dealing with them is complicated by their high level of organization, fanaticism, and ability to conceal their intentions. The exposure of such a gang in New York is truly a significant success for local investigative organs. In Nizhny Novgorod today, the names of the winners were announced of the first international competition of performers, and it's called Alexander Scriabin. Probably the Nizhgorod's competition will be best remembered by the 3-hour piano concert, which in the end was heard 4 times. And each of the 4 finalists interpreted it in his own way. Behind them, truly, there is a 12-day marathon of 3 rounds with various programs as a result of 38 contenders representing 12 countries of near and distant abroad countries, including the United States, Japan, Canada, South Korea, and Finland. The international jury has invited 4 representatives of Russia into the finals. 3rd place went to 2 of them, Kalyana Kornienko from Moscow and Gennady Kurskoy from Nizhny Novgorod. The 2nd place went to the Nizhgorod resident who recently went to study in Moscow, Dmitry Kaprin. The laureate of the 1st prize was Evgeny Mikhailov from Kazan. With this, I bid you farewell, and in a moment, Daria Chervonenko awaits you with the sports news. All the best. Good evening. The 2nd match of the semi-finals of the World Chess Championships between Anatoly Karpov and Boris Gelfand ended at the 50th move with a tie. The score was equal 1-1. The 3rd match by regulation will be held the 9th of February, and Gelfand will play the white figures. Far from that chess table in Moscow in the Latvian Embassy, the Riga Memorial of the 8th historical Mikhail Tally World Championships. The Super Tournament marks the beginning of a new series of competitions of the Professional Chess Association. On the 14th of February in Moscow, the largest track and field tournament indoors will be held, called Russian Winter. Attendance confirmations were given by many famous athletes, among them the famous Marilyn Oti and the Russian sprint queen Irina Privalova. I achieved the 2nd best result in the entire history of track and field, that is 10.77 on the 100 meter, and the win in the European Championships. I won 2 gold medals. And what is especially pleasurable, in the end of the season, I won the World Cup in 400 meters. This winter, with pleasure, I will participate in the competitions, the Russian Winter, which begins the 14th of February, and I hope to show good results there. Good evening. A powerful cyclone over the Barents Sea is bringing unfavorable and windy weather in the north of the European part of Russia. On the Kola Peninsula, in Karelia, the Arkhangels district, and the northwestern area, snow and blizzards are expected, with snowdrifts on the roads. Temperatures at night, -10 to 15. During the day, -6 to 11. In the Nenetsk Autonomous District in the Republic of Komi, during the day and night between -5 to 10. In the Baltic countries and in Belarus, partly cloudy skies with some isolated patches of rain. By evening, snow and rain mixed together. And at night, 0+3, during the day, 0-5. In the central and Volgovyatsk areas, cloudy with wet snow, possible light blizzards with icy roads. At night, -2 to +1 degrees. By the end of the day, the temperature will drop down to -3 to 7. On the central Volga, in the central Chernozem area, in the north of Ukraine, it's cloudy with snow mixed with rain and very heavy snowdrifts on the roads. Temperatures during the night and day from -2 to +3 degrees. In the south of Ukraine and in Moldova, cloudy with isolated periods of precipitation, and it's warmer, +3 to 8. On the lower Don and lower Volga, it's cloudy with some wet snow. The reason for that is a warm atmospheric front which will come into the area from the northwest. At night, -1 to 4, during the day around 0. In the Krasnodar and Stavropol Rim areas, at night around 0, during the day, +2 to 7 with rain. On the Black Sea coast, it's also rainy around Sochi, +7 to 9 degrees. In the Chechen Republic, in Ingushetia and Dagestan, in the morning and evening, fog, -2 to 5 degrees. During the day will be cloudy with some rain mixed with snow. Temperatures from +2 to 5. Beyond the Caucasus, partly cloudy skies, no precipitation, at night around 0. During the day in Georgia, Azerbaijan, +5 to 10 degrees. In the valleys of Armenia, from 0 to +5 degrees. In St. Petersburg, tomorrow, variably cloudy skies with periods of snow during the night, -3 to 5, during the day, -6 to 8 degrees. In Moscow, it's cloudy with some patches of wet snow, possible light blizzards and gusty winds. With snowdrifts on the road, temperatures during the night and day from 0 to -2. By the evening, the temperatures will drop to -5 to 7 degrees. The forecast was compiled by, according to the data of the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia. All the best. Goodbye.